Hello, first graders. So today for reading, what we're going to do is we're going to read about memorials and historic buildings. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to pay attention to key details. So remember, key details tell us more about the main idea, which is memorials and historic buildings. It is what we learned about a topic. Okay, so if you have your packet, go ahead and grab it. And what we're going to do now is we're going to skip ahead to page 6, to chapter 1. So as the author is reading, I want you to think about what is something that you learned, what is something new, or what is something important that you notice in this part of our story.
Chapter 1, Memorials to Presidents.
Mount Rushmore is a memorial to honor 4 presidents or leaders of the United States. Workers carved the faces of the presidents into the side of the mountain. Each face is about 18 meters or 60 feet long.
So right now, I just heard that each face is about 18 meters or 60 feet long. And that's something new. And that tells me more about this monument. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my highlighter. And remember, if you don't have one, you can always use a crayon. It doesn't have to be yellow. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight that sentence that says each face is about 18 meters or 60 feet long. And what's another thing I learned was that about a thing called Mount Rushmore. And I learned that Mount Rushmore is a memorial to honor 4 presidents. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that as well. Remember, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video to catch up. And did we learn anything else about Mount Rushmore? We also learned that Mount Rushmore is in South Dakota, because it tells us where this thing is. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this page, and we're also going to listen to key details. So right away, I know that this is going to talk about presidents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen for things that I'm learning about these presidents as the author is reading to us.
These presidents also have memorials in Washington, D.C. George Washington was the first president. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Abraham Lincoln freed many enslaved people and kept the country united. Theodore Roosevelt helped to preserve our nation's parks and forests.
So right now, what is something that you just learned about these presidents? You learned that George Washington was the first president. Good. So let's go ahead and highlight that sentence. Oops. And what else did we learn here? We learned that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. So that's another key detail. That's something else that the author wants to teach us about. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And what about here? What's something that we learned about Abraham Lincoln? What did he do and why is he important? Abraham Lincoln freed many enslaved people and kept the country united. Good. So that tells us who he is and what he did and why is he important. Now, Theodore Roosevelt, what did he do? He helped to preserve the nation's parks and forests, so that's good. So let's go ahead and highlight it. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at page 10, and it's called Chapter 2, Memorials to Brave Citizens. And looking at this page, I'm already curious about what the author included a statue of the person. He looks like a soldier. And then over here, it's more pictures of people who look like they're soldiers. So I'm curious as to what this page is going to teach us about these soldiers. So as the author is reading, we're going to listen for key details, maybe about people fighting for things, maybe about soldiers.
Chapter 2, Memorials to Brave Citizens.
The Minutemen fought during the American Revolutionary War. These citizens were ready to fight the British in a minute. A statue honors these soldiers. More than 150 years ago, brave men fought and died at the Alamo. The men fought for the independence or freedom of Texas. A statue honors these men.
So what did we learn about these soldiers? What did they do and why are they important? So they are important because they fought in the American Revolutionary War and they were called Minutemen. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that with my highlighter. Okay. I also learned about people that did something special in a place called the Alamo, which is right here. What did they do? Yes. So this says, more than 150 years ago, brave men fought and died at the Alamo. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that because that's something important and that's something I didn't know before and it's something the author taught me. So that is a key detail. It also tells me that these people fought for independence or freedom in Texas. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight fought for freedom. I'm sorry, fought for independence or freedom of Texas. And I'm also going to highlight a sentence here that says, a statue honors these men, which tells me why these statues were made. So remember, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at our last chapter, which is chapter 3. It is called Historic Buildings. And remember, we're listening for key details or something that we learned. So looking at this picture here, I'm noticing that this is the Capitol building, and this is where the Congress works, and this is the White House where our president lives. So I'm going to listen for key details about the White House and the Capitol building.
Chapter 3, Historic Buildings.
The United States Capitol is a historic building in Washington, D.C. The members of Congress work here. They make the laws or rules for our country. The White House is the home of the President of the United States. The President also works here. Both of these buildings are more than 200 years old.
So what did we learn just now about the Capitol building, and what did we just learn about the White House? Good. Some people said, I know that we just learned that the White House is home to the President of the United States. So go ahead and highlight that. I'm also going to highlight that the president works here, because it tells me more about the White House. Okay. So what you're going to do now is you're going to look at the Capitol building, and you're going to go ahead and highlight 2 sentences that you think is important. All right. So if you highlighted those 2 sentences, give yourselves a pat on the back. And we're going to talk about the packet paper now. All right, first graders. So we just finished reading Memorials and Historic Buildings, and we were looking for key details as we're reading. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a packet for this piece of paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and think about all the key details we just heard. And remember, if you need some help, you can always look in the video, you can always look in the story to help you. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at memorials to presidents and think about something that you just learned. So I learned that and think about what's something you learned. And remember, you're going to look in the story in your packet. And you're going to look in this page. Alright. And then after you're done with that, you can draw a picture of something that you learned. And then here it says, Memorials to Brave Citizens. You're going to do the same thing now. You're going to do what you just did for Memorials to Presidents. So right here, you're going to think about what's something that you learned about Memorials to Brave Citizens. So you can also start with, I learned that. And the last one is historic buildings, which is the one about the White House and the Capitol building. And what did you learn about the White House or the Capitol building here? Okay, and we can start ours with, I learned that. And then you're going to fill in what you learned, okay? So maybe for the historic buildings, I learned that the White House is where the president lives. And then you could draw a picture to match that. With Memorials to Brave Citizens, you could talk about the soldiers from the Alamo. And for the Memorials to Presidents, I want to talk about how big it is. So that is what you're going to do with this page. Okay? And remember, if you're lost, you can always look in the story. You can always watch the video again. Alright? Be safe, be kind, wash your hands, and I will see you soon. Love you guys. Bye.